Hello, hello. So good to have you back. Here we are in another episode of Daddy Dialogues. I'm Dr. Ethan Haymovitz, Daddy Ethan,
And I am Daddy Fields here.
and we have a fucking amazing guest today, Don Mike of DiaperActive.
Hello.
Welcome.
Welcome. Yes, thank you very much for giving us your time. But yeah, I've been wanting to talk to you. I think we met. You were at Capcom this year.
Yes.
And I think we met very, very briefly. But I know that you're a pioneer. Just so happy for you to be on the podcast. But do you mind just introducing us and just telling us, who you are and your connection with the ABDL community?
Sure. My name is Don. I run an event called DiaperActive. I have been ABDL for about 10 years. I've been in the leather community for like 25 years, but I discovered my ABDL side. And I shouldn't say I discovered it. I kind of knew it was there, but I didn't really explore it until about 10 years ago. And what I found was that a bunch of my leather friends were into diapers and such, but no one ever talked about it. There was this sort of shame and people were afraid to come out about it. And I thought, if I had seen this out at the bars, I would be doing it. I would have been doing it for 25 years. So I thought I'm going to throw a little party, and that way people will see it's a thing, and then we could all just run around in our diapers and no one will care. Well, that first event was 9 years ago, and It was so big. So many people came just from
That's
word
awesome.
of mouth that the owner of the bar was like, well, when's the next one? And then here we are 9 years later. So yeah, that's me.
Amazing.
I regret deeply that I did not know you and I did not know DiaperActive at the time that I lived in LA, because I would have been all over that.
I wish I'd gone because I've heard very good things about it. So I was in LA almost over 2 years ago, but yeah, I didn't know, and I wish I would have. But
We do more promotion now, but yeah, when I started, it was kind of more just around the diaper circles, like on Facebook. But yeah, it's kind of and I just use my personal Facebook profile to advertise that. Like everyone in my life knows I'm ABDL. I'm so out about it.
okay,
Yeah, I love that. And I want to just give a pause to reflect on what DiaperActive represents to me, because I just want to give our listeners a sense of just how awesome it is. So it is like when I was there, the one time that I was there, it was just such a colorful and diverse representation of people and expressions of creative style and fashion and diapers and sexuality and gender. It was just an explosion. And I really do think that that has a lot to do with your leadership, Don. I've told you this before, but I think it's because you as a person embody that. You are kind of like a little explosion everywhere you go. And it's amazing what you do. And I came into myself, I feel like that night when I went to DiaperActive, like, I'm definitely supposed to be a daddy. This is my role in life. So yeah, thank you for that.
I need to hire you as my PR person. Damn.
Oh my God.
And the interesting thing about it is it's specifically a gay male oriented event, mainly because all the stuff that I was seeing when I came out was very, like, even in the pansexual community is usually really geared towards straight people, even if it's unintentional. And the few things I have gone to over the years up until Capcom, I really felt like I'm just visiting somebody else's party. I'm not part of this. My role is to sit in a corner because obviously none of this is for me. And I thought, well, I want an event that's for me.
Yeah.
Mhm. I'll say, having said that, it's open to anyone. It's
Yeah.
in a bar, which is a public space. Everyone's welcome to come. But I always make it a point to let people know that it's a gay male event, specifically because there's diaper porn playing on the TVs. It's a leather dive bar that we do it in, the Bullet, which is an amazing place. So it's a hypersexual atmosphere. And I know a lot of people in the ABDL community maybe don't vibe with that. And it's like, there are so many events to go to. Maybe this isn't the one for you. If you're not comfortable in that atmosphere, there are other things. But this is very specifically filling a niche that wasn't being filled before.
I still think it is ironic then that there is this diversity. I've sort of demonstrated that as well, but this was so diverse as compared to all the events I've been to, the smaller events, local, regional events, and I was just blown away by like the men, the women, the transgender. It was awesome.
Well, I think it's very different than the usual type of ABDL event. So, that's another reason I don't want to change it. It's like the people who come and the very diverse crowd that come really vibe with what I'm doing. So, you know, I'm just happy to be able to do it for people. You know?
And I don't think you should change it. Like you said, you mentioned there was a niche to be filled, and people are responding to that in a very positive way. Within
this is one of the really exciting things about bringing Don is to talk about ageism, because I think a lot of the things we've even been talking about on the podcast have raised some issues with respect to ageism.
Yes.
And I love your point of view, and I want to hear more of it.
Yeah, so if you could just talk about, you know, the challenges you have faced in terms of ageism and how you've kind of worked through that on your journey.
Sure. Well, and the thing is, I'm going to be 55 next week. So I'm an older.
Happy birthday! Happy early birthday! Yeah.
And I'm an older ABDL, and it is one thing that's a big challenge for me, because all the profiles I see, well, I should say all of them, but so many of the profiles I see online, all the daddies seem to be looking for 20-year-olds. And it's also that same way in the pup community and a lot of people in the leather community. But it gets really frustrating being an older little and really not being able to express myself. I mean, it's nice to be able to do it in a public setting and hanging out with my friends and that sort of thing. But when it comes to actual playtime, like, it's very unsettling to sit around watching everybody else play and kind of thinking, well, you know, I guess I'll just sit here with my teddy bear and not be part of things, you know?
Right.
And I'm going to all right, Ethan, I'm calling you out. We're going to have this conversation. You said I could.
All right. So I welcome it.
We had this conversation. This was like when we first sort of got to know each other. This was a while ago. And and I had a little bit of a crush on Ethan. And I said, you know, if you lived out here in LA, I would totally want to be your little. And you said, dude, in a few years you're going to be 60. And you laughed. And I know that you didn't mean it to be mean, but oh my God, that was like a knife to the heart.
Damn, Ethan.
I'm so sorry about it.
Brutal.
I know. Well, you know, now that we know each other, I can laugh about it. But at the time, it was like, and I think the reason I want to bring it up is not to really call you out. I bring it up because people think that way and they say things like that, not realizing that this is actually a really big issue.
Yeah,
it is a really big issue.
I have a friend. I have a friend. I won't say his name because he's very protective of that. But I have an older. He's in his 50s, and yes, just for him, because what he's looking for is he likes the idea of having a dad or a dom who's younger than him, and so that's a challenge for him because, like what you're mentioning, a lot of dads are generally looking for someone who's younger. So it'll be challenging. It'll be difficult for him to find that.
Let me interject here. I think this is an incredibly important conversation that is not going to be done justice on this one episode. This is like so deeply rooted in the psychological play that we do in general. I think it really needs to be parsed out. And we need to keep talking about it. Don, this is an introduction to the conversation, if anything. I think we really...
I think we should talk about, and I would like, if you're interested, Don, like when we do talk about this in greater detail, I would love to have you back. But I agree with Ethan that this demands a greater discussion than just one episode.
You know, I respect you guys so much for that. That means a lot to me, and just hearing you say that, because that's true. It is very true. And whether it's me or somebody else, I really appreciate that this isn't like a one-time, we'll bring it up once and then move on, because it really is an ongoing thing.
Correct. Yes.
It is. Because I think, like, I envision in some way, we're going to talk more, obviously, but I envision, you know, you saying your piece and then that's just like the beginning formulation of a collective sort of reality check.
Hmm.
That's just a very early ideation of what needs to happen. Because my response, other than feeling terribly guilty and ashamed of myself for that comment, is also, I thought about it and I stewed on it a little bit more, and I was talking to some other people about it, and then I had some thoughts. Uh, well, what would you think if, you know, and I raised this to you, Don, like, what would you think if there was a 20-year-old who wanted to be a daddy? And
Mhm.
that is a whole other sort of level of ageism that plays into this. But that's because age is so central to what we're talking about. But it does not mean that the uh, injustice that is carried out and the
Hmm.
biases that we spew should continue. I mean,
Right.
we need to be
Yeah.
understanding of it at the
Hmm.
same time.
Yes. And what I wanted to ask you, Don, is like, why do you think, just because of what Ethan was talking about, is like with ABDLs, you have people who are like age playing, or they're diving into another part of themselves that's independent of their actual age, right? So why do you think that these biases exist? Why do you think it's still there? If in reality it shouldn't really matter.
Oh, I have a very good analogy for this. But I want to say something really quickly before I move on. For Ethan,
Yeah.
like you said, you feel like terrible. Like, I want to say, when I brought this up to you in private, the first thing you said is, "Will you come on the show and talk about this?" So to
Mm.
me, the fact that you didn't try to backtrack or make excuses, the fact that you said, basically, thank you for calling me out and let's discuss this, to me, that's a sign of growth. And so you are alleviated of guilt. Like,
Okay.
I just
Well,
think that means so much in any conversation. If people are willing to talk about the issue rather than skirt around it, they get my immense respect. So thank you.
thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
Nice
so
job.
I've
my
been
my
canceled so many times I can't even count. So,
well,
There's
if
one
you're not
left you have to
pissing
worry
somebody
about.
off, you're doing it wrong.
yeah.
Okay, so my analogy. Years ago when Tumblr first, you can tell I've been thinking about this. Years ago when Tumblr first was a big thing, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who was a person of color, and we were talking about biases and preferences. And I said, well, I like all kind of guys. I will play with guys of various age, any age that's legal, any race,
Mhm.
any size, what have you. And he said, well, that's nice. I wouldn't have known that from your Tumblr. And I was a little offended at
Mm.
first. And I went back and I looked
Mm-hmm.
at my Tumblr, and I have a whole shopping list of fetishes, and that's usually what's on my Tumblr. But I noticed, because I was so focused on like the fetish itself, all of the guys on my Tumblr were 20 something white guys with six pack abs.
Ah.
And
Mhm.
I thought, this is so not a representation of the kind of guys I'm attracted to. So I had to
Mm-hmm.
really take a long, hard look at it. And I kind of realized, like, my idea of eye candy is something that had really been sort of
Mm.
imprinted on me by
Yeah.
society,
Such
because
a good point.
yeah, it's like fast food. Like, if you get a really good piece of steak,
Yes.
you will put that piece of steak in your mouth and you'll let it sit on your tongue and savor the flavors and the
Mm-hmm.
aroma and everything. You take a bite out of a Big Mac, let that sit on your tongue for a minute. It's going to be disgusting because it's
I
not
love
meant to
that.
be savored. It's meant to go right over the tongue and get
Right.
that sort of quick rush of whatever flavors have been chemically embossed on it.
Infused.
No,
Yeah.
dude. No, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, I think.
When
Yeah,
I
I'm so glad that you said that, because I think that's
yeah,
that's a really good way to describe it. Yes.
Thank you. I've had a lot of time to think about this.
when
No,
when
no,
that
it's
when
good. It's good.
the reason that resonates for me is because I often think, like, logically in my non-reptilian brain, what do I really want in a partner and in a relationship? It is not what a 20-year-old can offer me, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I think the eye candy example is a perfect example of the sort of non not entirely conscious, sort of very biased 20-second reaction to what's presented before you. It's not a thoughtful reflection or whatever. And, it has no bearing on what is actually physically attractive.
Mm-hmm.
when you're engaging in a sexual activity. So yeah, I mean, because that all goes away as soon as, like, within 5 minutes of having a interaction with someone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just the first look. I don't know. What do
Yeah,
you
and
all think?
if you're looking for a one-time thing, then maybe it's not as much of an issue. But if you're looking to actually have a relationship, you think about it, your attraction for young people, say you go for a 25-year-old, and you are lucky enough that you're together for 10 years. In 10 years, that 25-year-old is going to be a 35-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
you know what I mean? You want to look at what's
Right. So if you
inside.
want something, if you want
Yeah.
something sustainable, then you're going to have to let go. And I think maybe that's what it is. Is this is like we're trying to hold on to this fantasy that we have for as long as we can, and like to get into the reality of it. I think that's why like people
Mm-hmm.
tend to try to shy away from that. But yeah, to your
I
point,
think
like
it's a good
that,
point.
that 20-year-old is going to age. They're going to be in their 30s and their 40s, and you're going to age as well. And so
Yeah.
you have to, I mean, and they might have their own, like, I liked you as a daddy, when you were in your 30s, but,
Yeah.
in your 40s. So that might be going on as
Now
well.
you're grandpa.
Right. I wanted a dad. I don't want a granddaddy. So
No,
yeah,
listen,
that could be going
I
on as
think
well.
there's another level to this, which is that there is I know for me, one of the motivations for like doing this in the first place has been midlife crisis, trying to recapture some of my youth in some weird fucked up way. Okay. And I understand and recognize that as part of the fantasy. That also goes away, and that is just a psychological mythology that I've sort of constructed in my head.
Mhm.
Also, like the fast food example, is not really the substance of what I want and need. I do think that there's something to that. Like, there's all these layers that we need to sort of pick apart in
Yeah.
thinking about this.
Mhm.
Well, and I just want to sort of interject too, like with that analogy. Just because, like, I'm not saying fast food doesn't taste good, and I'm not saying that is also every young person, because I've met some young men who are both dom and
Yeah.
sub, who
Right.
and puppies and littles and everything else, who were like old souls, and they had so much experience and so much knowledge
Mhm.
at that young age, and they were amazing. And were just really, even if they were newbies, they were just good people. And I've met some
Thank you.
really shitty 50-year-olds. So,
Sure.
Of course.
so
Of
it's
course.
not simply about the age. It's about transcending
Yeah.
age and looking at the person and seeing if you have a connection there outside of their age, whether it's being
Absolutely.
Oh
young
my
or old.
God. We needed to hear that.
Yes.
I needed to hear that.
You're
Let me
opening
say,
up,
speak for
you're opening
myself.
up so many doors, Don. Thank you.
Yes, this is very fun. And what Fields was saying about the sort of like grounding ourselves in reality again,
Mhm.
I think that is so fucking important, because I get lost in the fantasy all the time. I know that when we talk about these things in the abstract, we tend to get lost in the fantasy a lot too. And that's something that Papa Terry and
Mhm.
Growing were
Growing.
talking about the other day. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a very real issue that we face in the kink scene, is like just distinguishing fantasy from reality, and like, how do we build a reality that lives up to our fantasies in some ways? I don't know.
It's
Don.
work. It's work. It
Sorry,
took me like probably a couple of years, like I said back on those Tumblr days, to stop just adding the things that hit me right off the bat, and to stop and actually look at each picture as I was scrolling through and thinking, okay, so this image has all the different fetishes I like. Like, this guy is shaved, I like shaved bodies. This guy's
Mhm.
tied up, I like bondage. And then thinking, okay, this is maybe not the kind of person that first catches my eye. And then I would
Mhm.
stop and look and go, there's so much that's hot about this picture. And once I
Mhm.
broke out of that initial sort of thing that I was taught, I started realizing, oh my God, like, this guy's got a huge belly and he's so hot. And this guy's a little
Yeah.
skinny
Mhm.
thing, but he's so hot. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many ways to see a person as being
Mhm.
sexy that are,
Mhm.
above of what we're just taught by the media,
Yes.
I think you're right. Hmm. Well, word.
All right, I want to issue you guys a challenge.
Sure.
Okay.
Mhm.
One of the things I've noticed about your show, and I love your show, by the way. I listen to every episode, and I love because there really isn't anything else like it, and I think it's really wonderful.
Yay!
And I know that you guys are, and Ethan and I talked about this. You two are talking about your personal experiences, and if you guys both typically like younger guys, that's awesome. Like you have a preference, that's fine. But I noticed that you tend to talk in generalizations a lot of time, and you've said things like the one that really hit me was, should the daddies be the ones to have to pay for everything? And one of you made the comment of, well, you know, most ABDLs are either living with their parents or they've got a roommate, and so maybe and it's taken that thing like, in your experience, this is an issue. Yeah. But when it comes to older ABDLs, you know, I haven't lived in my parents' house for 30 years. I live on my own. I have a good income. I buy my own diapers. So it's kind of like maybe my challenge is when you're talking about your experiences, maybe to once in a blue moon go, but you know, there are other situations outside of this, you know. That's a little wink and a nod that we still exist. That's kind of what that's what I'd like to hear.
I think when I'm the one that said that, so I'll take ownership of that. But I say that I'm trying to be generalized, and I'm trying to be, at least moving forward, be better about saying like, this is my personal experience and this isn't all encompassing. So when I did talk about that, because another guy actually, he messaged me on YouTube, and he brought up the same thing, where he was like, you know, I don't, like, I have my own house and like I'm not living with roommates. And I was like, you're absolutely right. And I apologized. And I said I didn't it was never intentional. I didn't mean to like box people in and just you know, blanket statement with it. But that's fair.
Listen, and I am a broke daddy. So I thought I was the one that said it. I was like, wait a minute, did I say that?
No, I said that because I actually talked to my therapist about it, because he was like,
okay. Well,
I asked him because I wanted to know, because I wasn't quite sure, because I always want to have when I make responses, I tend to want to have as much feedback from others before I make a decision. So I reached out to him. I was like, can you listen to that? And how I framed that, do you think it's fair that guy said that? And he was like, I could see where he was coming from, but at that point I felt comfortable enough to just reach out on him on his own. But yeah, I did apologize, and I did say, you know what, you're right, I did mean to frame it that way, but I totally understand what you're coming from.
Oh man, I mean, I feel personally, from my experience, this is actually a weirder issue for me in my point of view, because I am Daddy Ethan, and I am also some kind of representative in some weird way of some profession, because I'm a doctor, but I'm a doctor of social work, to be clear, and that's a very broad category of professionals. And I am not such a great expert, but I have some expertise on certain things and not others. And it's weird to walk the line between being Daddy Ethan, who has a very specific point of view, and, I can speak to this academic subject in this way. So it speaks to me in another level, Don, what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Of course. Well, you know, and I love you guys are giving me, you know, a platform to speak about this. So thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm so glad. I mean,
I did want to. Sorry, go ahead, Ethan.
Yeah. No. You.
No, so I did want to ask you, just because I have met other older ABDLers who, just because of what you're talking about, Don, they just become so frustrated with.
He's not that old. He's 55, man. I'm like around the corner.
I'm sorry. Was that offensive? If it was offensive, I'll back it up. Okay.
It's offensive to me.
When I'm chatting with people, I always say, I point to myself and go, you know, she's well put together, but she's old.
Oh my God.
Okay, so just because they become so frustrated with the situation that some of them have even considered just becoming dads, just kind of abandoning their desire to be a little. Have you ever thought of doing that, or you're very much firm in what you want and you're not really to compromise on it?
Well, sort of. Some years ago, actually, this was before I got into ABDL. I had been a pup and a leather boy for so many years, and I wanted to have my own pup. And I thought I would like to try being an alpha pup, maybe still have my own owner or daddy, but also have a pup of my own. And I met a really, really sweet pup, and we ended up having a 4-year relationship. And but early on, he told me that he couldn't bear to see me submit to somebody else. So I had to shut my sub side off completely and just be his daddy, master, sir, whatever we were. And he liked to call me master, but to me, there's a whole history behind that term that I didn't feel that I had attained that. But anyway, that's another story. But so I did for like 4 years. I was Dom, daddy, whatever. And what I found was, what I found was it was like my battery was drained by the end of it. Like I loved him dearly, but my battery was drained. And I think that
beautifully put. Beautifully put. That's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah, my ideal relationship would be like in a leather family or an ABDL family, and I would like to maybe be the alpha of the boys or the pups or whatever. But I would also really want to have a daddy ahead of me. So I would be a really good big brother or alpha pup or what have you. But without that balance of having the Dom influence in my life, the daddy influence, I can't do it alone. So I could definitely play that role, but it would have to be in a bigger setting.
Gotcha.
But I couldn't just be a dad. That's why I can't be a daddy by myself, because after that relationship, that battery is still depleted.
May I ask, as a follow-up, Don,
Sure.
This is something that's come up on our podcast before. Like, what do you think is the reason that there's so few daddies?
Again, there's a whole trifecta with the ABDLs and the pups, and I guess maybe furries too. It's maybe not so much. I don't think there's a power hierarchy in furry world, but with pups and ABDLs, there's so many pups that are looking for handlers and so few handlers. And so I don't know. I think people are so attracted to the lifestyle of being cared for and being in that role of being subservient, and not as many people are drawn to wanting to. I guess we have to take charge in our lives so much that at the end of the day, we kind of want someone to take charge of us. And I think that happens a lot more in society than, someone who's at the office all day and wants to come home and take charge of somebody else. I don't know. I really don't have an answer for it.
I love it though. I mean, it resonates.
Yeah, we'll keep.
I think that's why the whole thing of like what we have in the leather community, leather families, and pup packs, and I guess ABDL families aren't as prevalent, but I love the concept of it, because that way everyone kind of helps get their needs met. And when you have a bunch of brothers who all have a daddy, whatever their different needs are, they can help take care of each other's needs, even if the daddy's busy or doesn't live there or is away. So that there's this whole sort of interconnectedness, and that's what I see. But I don't see a lot of that in the ABL community. I would love to see that sort of start happening.
Agreed, 300%. I have always been a champion of the two daddy family model, and in my double dad family model, I'm the mommy daddy, so I understand this.
But see, now the two daddy family, when there are so few daddies and you have two daddies and one boy, it's like, no.
Oh, we can't have other good resources? I don't know. Is that what it is?
I'm just playing. Now, the two daddies and maybe like 10 boys, then I'm all about it. As long as you're spreading yourself out, but you can't concentrate two daddies on one boy. No. Now I'm going to be a brat. I'm going to be a brat and stop.
I mean...
No, I'm just
Ethan and I tag team a boy. Granted, it wasn't like a full-fledged relationship. I don't know what that would look like, but Ethan and I did tag team change a boy, and that was quite fun.
That's fun.
Memorable.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, so I think we can call it here. But thank you. Yeah, let's
I
leave
wore
it
you
there.
out, haven't I?
No, it's not that. It was just we're at the 30
No, we
minute
just
mark.
try to keep it short.
Yeah, we don't want to take up too much of your time.
I
But
understand.
thank you, Dawn, so much.
Thank you, Dawn.
I will speak for myself, but I really appreciate to have you on this episode, and hopefully.
And I'm going to speak for myself. I love you.
Oh, well, Billy Mitchell, I love you guys. You guys are both
But
awesome.
we will. I would like to revisit this, just ageism in the ABDL community in a future episode. So I would love to have you back.
I would love to be back. Thank you.
No problem. But thank you so much to our listeners. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. But this has been another episode of the Daddy Dialogues. I am Daddy Fields here.
I'm Daddy Ethan.
And we will see you next time. Take care, kiddos.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Awesome.